Hey, welcome back to another OVR weekly shooting drill. This week we're moving into an advanced drill. I guess technically it's not really a drill as much as we're going to talk about the FVTAC Wall. And you can get these plans online. There's a bunch of different versions, some that fold up so you can fit them in your trunk or your back of your truck easier, that are a little bit lighter. This was one that I did, and I used one sheet of plywood, and when I cut this out, I made it so that I would get two out of one sheet. And I gave the other wall that I made to a good friend of mine that he's a former Air Force OSI agent that went on and just graduated med school this year from Florida State. So congratulations. With that said, I did a few minor adjustments to this one. The squares are still the same dimensions and in the same locations, but I added some stiffening things to the side because I only used 1/2 inch plywood just to make it easier. So, all that being said, let's go over kind of the different things you can use this wall for. And we've used it in the past on some of the other drills, and we actually have a very specific barricade wall drill that we do. There are 9 holes on here, and as we look at all 9 holes, you've got the ones here on the top that are opened up, but then you have 3 on the bottom. That one's a triangle, and then you have 2 different size squares. I'll be honest with you, we don't really use those bottom ones because that's for law enforcement and military. For home defense purposes, really shouldn't be laying down to shoot through something. Obviously, if you want to do that, come on in here, we can work that out. But in general, we don't use that. So, what we'll do is we'll kind of go over each one individually and kind of explain those. So starting with just the basic side of it is, this is a barricade, it's like a wall. And so with that, you've got to learn to work around the barricade, exposing as little of your body as you can. And again, we've done these training things where we've shown you the different aspects of barricade shooting. But specifically for the wall, not only do we have the side here, we have these cutouts. On each of these cutouts, these can represent windows or door frames or any number of things that you might have to shoot through or around. And so, for instance, using this one up top for somebody my height, then I can get my hand and rest my hand up against here, and that would support the pistol. At the same time, if I'm going to use the rifle, I can do the same thing with the rifle. And you can see on the rifle, my fingers are wrapped around the frame, my thumb is wrapped around the rifle, and I'm securing the rifle in place up against here. Now this is doing it from this side. If we were to switch sides, then we can do it in a different way and trap the rifle more this direction up against there. At the same time, if we're using it as the side here, again, as we come around, I can trap my hand underneath. I can trap it in this position, whatever's comfortable for you to be able to do it. What you don't want is to actually put the entire weapon against the barrier up where the bolt is. Or in the case of a pistol, you don't want it resting right up against there. You want to have your hand resting to give you that stability, that support. Moving from the side and moving from the cutouts here, again, you could have a nice high window here that you might be shooting through, or could be the vehicle, top of a vehicle or something. And then as you move down, these could be other window frames that you're shooting through. You also have the angles here. Now you can put the pistol directly through here and not touch anything, but ideally you really should probably have your hand inside and resting on this, because what you don't want is to get behind here and you can see through the picture here how you've lost my weapon. We don't want to shoot the barricade. We want to make sure that we're protruded through but not resting the weapon on here. Moving through each of these holes, again, you have an angled hole here. You have another angled hole down below here the opposite way. You have your little squares that you can shoot through, and then you have your slits down below that could be shot through. Each one requires a different position, and Michael has done a great video and lesson plan on actually how to use this properly and do this proper shooting. Obviously, the rifle and the pistol are slightly different, but there's still some similarities to those. And so if you're shooting through the slit, again, your weapon, you want to kind of have through. You don't want to have it way back here. You want to protrude enough that you're not going to shoot the barricade, but not so much that it's going to interfere with anything else. So on the barricade drill, there's a drill called a 9-hole, and that's where you shoot each of the holes, including the 3 at the bottom. Again, our version of the 9-hole, we use the 6 holes up top. We don't use the 3 on the bottom. And what we do with that is we use the left side, the long side, as one of your holes, and then we use 2 of the angles over here, the cutouts. To me, that's just a better use for home defense purposes, because you're more realistically, you're going to be shooting through something like that. Let's say that you're shooting through a serving window from your kitchen to your living room, or you're shooting from your doorway into your hall, and you've got to come around the barrier to do that. And same thing for some of these slits here is if somebody's coming down your hall and you're able to knock some boxes over, or some bookshelves or something like that get knocked over, you may have to shoot from a weird angle. So these are still really good for home defense purposes. So go online, take a look. These are really easy to build. You don't really need much in the way of tools. Reality, you need some 2x4s and some plywood, and you can go as cheap as you want with MDF plywood, which is MDF is probably the least expensive of the plywoods. But it can paint up pretty well, and you can see I just put a little stain here. This is all stuff I had around the garage. And and then if you want to reinforce it at all, you can do that with some 2x4s. Again, in my case, what we've done is we've dadoed in the bottom, we've dadoed in the sides just to add more strength and stability. Again, I used a 1/2 inch for decrease some of the weight. Do it how you want to do it that works for you.